What's up YouTube? Daniel Carter at Afro Herpkeeper here. Today I am proud and very excited to show y'all the largest, most ambitious, and most experimental project I've worked on this channel so far. I just finished everything up last night, and I think it's finally ready for the public eye. So without any further ado, let's get started because I am very excited to explain to y'all exactly what this is, what it's doing in my room, and what my plans are for it.
My life is a bit of a mess, but I like it that way. Between juggling school, work, dozens of animals, and a constant drive to explore, things can get pretty hectic. But one thing always stays the same: a burning passion for wildlife and a desire to preserve the biodiversity of our world through public education, conservation, and animal care. My name is Daniel Carter, and you're watching Afro Herpkeeper.
Now before we actually get started here, I wanted to let y'all know I have actually begun the process of moving all my animals back into my own reptile room, and we've started out with Lemonhead the crested gecko as well as a few invertebrates. So I'm going to get Lemonhead out right now just to show off. Here's my little baby girl. She is not nearly as small and baby-like as she was when I left her with James. I want to say that he has taken phenomenal care, not just of my animals, but also of their enclosures. Lemonhead's vivarium is looking better than ever. She has multiple species of plants growing in there, some grasses, even some bamboo, and a thriving community of microfauna in there as well. Look at this chubby little baby. I do have a soft spot for crested geckos. A, they're very soft. B, they're just so doofy looking. Look at that. Such a cool little animal, and they're so grabby too. Alright, so Lemonhead here is going to go back, and we're actually going to get this video started now. So, first off, what exactly is this thing? Well, this is a 30-inch by 30-inch by 60-inch Grow Lab horticultural brand grow tent. And how do I put this? While my more mature audience may associate things of this nature with nefarious or even illegal purposes, what a grow tent is basically a small indoor greenhouse. There's actually a growing number of animal keepers working with grow tents as reptile and amphibian enclosures. I thought it was a really cool concept, and somebody I know offered this to me for free. It's a bit of a piece of junk, but hey, I'll take it. So as I said, this is a 30-inch by 30-inch by 60-inch indoor grow tent, and you can find something like this for about $80 on Amazon.com. I'm sure you could also go to your local herbal or horticultural supply store and pick one up for fairly cheap. I think I've left y'all waiting in the dark for long enough, so before I actually explain what my plans are with this, let's get her opened up. I'm going to start all the way on the bottom here. This thing is just covered in zippers and Velcro straps all over. Your standard tent is not going to give you this much trouble. This one's just a little bit old and a little bit junky. So, without any further ado, I am proud to introduce to you my fully bioactive intraspecies communal indoor greenhouse. So, as you can see, there's a lot going on in here, so let's break it down step by step. First of all, I'm going to get this little guy off of here. This is one of the enclosure's first inhabitants, and unlike most of the others, this one is in there for purely decorational purposes. This is a Texas species of flower beetle. It's native to my area. There have been a lot of them out recently, and it's just a beautiful insect. It's got this amazing metallic sheen to it. So I found a gathering of them one day on an oak tree that was leaking sap, and I decided to catch about 15 to 20 of them for use specifically in this enclosure. Now, to my surprise, these beetles are actually shockingly simple to care for. All they really need to thrive are moisture, decomposing leaf litter and wood, and soft fruits such as bananas, mangoes, or peaches. So we're going to set this guy back into his enclosure. Let him dig down in there. So when presented with the prospect of a huge indoor greenhouse taking up a significant chunk of my reptile room, I want to get my money's worth, and I want to get as much out of the space as possible. So everything about this enclosure is meant to be functional. There are 13 species and counting of tropical plants in here, and growing undisturbed in such a warm, humid climate, they're going to grow like crazy. My hope eventually is that they'll grow so long and so large that this entire shelf will be completely obscured. I want it to look like I took a chunk out of the rainforest and placed it in my room. So with this overall goal comes a functional purpose. Any plants that grow and reproduce rapidly, I can take cuttings from and I can use them in my other enclosures. Over time, it could save me quite a bit of money. And that's the general theme of this enclosure in general. As you can see and could probably hear earlier, down here are my newest additions, a trio of Chinese button quail. And despite the fact that I learned yesterday all 3 of these are males, my intention is to have these guys producing eggs in here, which will be fed to my blue-tongued skink, my Argentine tegu, and myself. Seeing as all 3 of these little fellas are actually male, I am going to have to be talking with the breeder. They don't have any adult females available right now, but in the future I'm sure it'll be worked out. Males of this species are said to be rather territorial, but these are still relatively young, and I haven't seen any aggressive behavior from them just yet. There are no females to fight over, so I'm not terribly worried. And as it turns out, I do have to deal with crafty escapees from time to time when I'm working with the tent all the way open like this, which is why I ensure that the door is closed, the cats and the tegu are not around, and I always keep a net on hand just in case. Now, as you saw just moments ago, there are actually quite a few invertebrates, such as beetles, inhabiting this enclosure. In total right now there are 4 or 5 species. That's definitely going to increase in the future. Right now there are about 60 or 70 isopods in here, all of them being the species of isopod native to where I live. There are also plenty of springtails roaming this enclosure, keeping it free of mold. And now, although these quail will take advantage of any protein source they find, that includes insects and other invertebrates, thankfully, for the bugs in here, they have plenty of hiding places. We've got this concrete slab here, which is both elevating the food and water for the quail and hiding invertebrates underneath. We have these rotting pieces of oak and tons of leaf litter in here. And for the insects that can climb and fly, the ground is not the only option. All of the planters and pots in here have been designed with a bioactive intention in mind. Not only are these planters filled with fully organic potting mix, they also include plenty of decomposing leaf litter and a bunch of these small lichen-covered oak branches. All of this is designed to give the bugs and invertebrates that call this place home safe places to stay away from the quail. So we've gone over the button quail, we've talked about all the insects that are in here, although I'm not about to dig out one of the banana roaches that are in here. You can take my word that they look just like tiny green cockroaches. You will definitely be seeing them in a future video. That I can guarantee. So we've talked about our quail, we've talked about our bugs, we've talked about our cleanup crew of isopods and springtails, and for the moment, that comprises every single animal in this tent. However, I will say, this is an ongoing project. This is not a one-off video by any means. You can rest assured that I'm going to be updating y'all on this enclosure as frequently as I can. But, as I said, this enclosure is a work in progress, which means that the animals that are in it now are not necessarily the animals that will be in it 6 months from now. I'm hoping, in addition to hosting the quail and the insects that are in here now, to establish a population of morning geckos or day geckos, which will have plenty of places to hide amongst the plants, amongst the planters, well up away from the quail where they can just cling to the wall. And while geckos don't lay eggs for human consumption, you can't take cuttings of them like you can with plants, and they won't be fed off to any of my animals. They can be bred and sold. So as I emphasized earlier, everything in this enclosure has a purpose. I can take cuttings of the plants, I can take eggs from the quail, I can take insects and use them as feeders for other animals, and I can take geckos and turn them into monetary income. I'm packing as much as I possibly can into this tiny indoor greenhouse. But now that we've gone over all the animals, it's time to take a look at the wide array of plants that I've stocked this thing with. And while plants may not be as exciting as animals to some, I've been exercising my green thumb a whole lot lately, especially with the addition of these fancy new 6000K full spectrum LED lights that I'm using over all of my vivariums. These are excellent for plants. If you have a planted vivarium, you need one of these lights. This is the way to go if you're growing plants indoors. So starting on the ground level here, we've got our Philodendron. This is a fairly common indoor house plant, and the reason it's planted on the ground is that it's going to get rather tall as an adult. Again, my hope is that I can eventually obscure this shelf completely, so I've included plants and placed them in a way that should help me reach that end goal. This Philodendron, although the quail have been nipping at it a little bit, has plenty of shoots that are out of their reach and plenty of new growth. Hopefully it'll come up to here eventually. So we've covered what's on the forest floor. Now we're moving up to the canopy. Starting on the top left, we've got a huge, lovely looking bird's nest fern. As you can see, I've labeled all my plants in here. I got a label maker recently, and I'm loving it. I've labeled all of my animals, and I figured I'd go a step further and label my plants too. So this is a bird's nest fern, also known as Asplenium nidus. Directly to its right is one of the most common and fastest growing houseplants on the market, golden pothos, also known as, I'm going to butcher this, Peperomia aurum. Now this, along with many other plants in here, is a vining plant, so my hope is that it will come up and around on these bars, drape down towards the floor, and that eventually these vining plants will fill up the whole space, along with the others. To the right of the golden pothos is my creeping fig, which, despite the name, is actually a species in the ficus genus. It's Ficus pumila. This, again, is a vining plant, although it has much smaller leaves, so it's going to creep up and around and hopefully provide some really lovely looking cover for this planter. Now just in front of these guys on the top level, we have 3 different species of air plants, or tillandsia. I could not tell you what exact species these are. If anybody would like to enlighten me, if any tillandsia experts are in my comment section, certainly feel free. But these are soil-free plants. You typically find them growing on other trees in their natural habitat, and they get all their nutrients from the water, the air, and the bark. They're very easy to care for when kept in the right conditions. These are actually not the only tillandsia species I have in here. If you look up in the corner here, this stuff is called, in its native habitat, which is Texas, ball moss. It is technically a species of tillandsia, or air plant. It's just a much more arid variety, adapted to a harsher, drier, hotter climate. Now, below all these guys are my 2 individually potted plants. Now, these guys are not in larger planters because they're going to get pretty big as far as I know. The one on the left right here is a species of Peperomia called Golden Gate Peperomia. It's a very creative common name considering its scientific name is Peperomia obstusifolia Golden Gate. To its right is a very popular vivarium plant because of its size and its exotic appearance, the dwarf umbrella tree, also known as Schlafera arbricola. So I assure you there is a rhyme and a reason to the madness of where I've placed my plants. As you might be able to guess, these are all high light intensity plants. These could be either or, and down here we have all of our low light plants. They're on the bottom shelf and they're getting the least of this light up here, which is ideal. So starting again on the left, we have a species called golden club moss, which is not technically a moss. It's a species known as Selaginella Crocenia aurea. This is a moss originating from Africa. To the right of our club moss is everybody's favorite, the spider plant. This is just about as hardy as the golden pothos up there. It's a very common plant, both as a house plant and a vivarium plant. And its namesake of the spider plant comes from the fact that when it reproduces, it shoots off little pups on strings. They vine down from here, and hopefully that'll look very nice in this enclosure, but they look like little spiders coming down. The scientific name of this one is Chlorophytum comosum. Now to the right of our chlorophytum here is the 13th and last species of plant in the grow tent at the moment, and it's known as Satin Pothos, or silver pothos. And similarly to our golden club moss over here, though it has pothos in the name, there's actually no relation. The scientific name of this one is Syndapsis pictus. And although it's the last one we're covering and it's down in this dark, shady corner of the tent, this has to be one of, if not my favorite, species in here. I just love the way, as this species vines out, the leaves on the vine alternate, just side to side, and it looks like it's actually climbing and grasping the wall. In addition to that, there's a silvery velvety sheen on these leaves. I just love it. It looks like somebody drew on them with silver Sharpie. So that concludes the plant tour of my grow tent here. And as I keep emphasizing, everything's subject to change. You might see something new on this shelf at some point. These plants might move around. One of the pots might end up on the ground. I might even plant new stuff in the planters, although we're a little bit lacking for space. But I think these 13 species are a fantastic start, and I can't wait to see how well they grow, how well they vine. You can see this one and this one are already starting to curve upwards towards the lights. Although you wouldn't know it, this pothos and this ficus have grown a little bit and stretched out more, which is what they're supposed to do, grasping the things around them, reaching towards those light fixtures. So all in all, you could say I'm very excited to see where this thing goes. Right now, as you can see, we have quail, we have plants, we have bugs. In the future, hopefully we'll have some lizards in here. I was considering for a while, once it got nice and lush and overgrown, I was considering a chameleon, but I realized that that would probably eat just about everything in the enclosure. I don't think I'd have any bugs left after that, and I do want to produce feeder insects in this thing, so maybe not that feasible. So I think now everything's been said, and I've lost a beetle or two because this thing's been open so long. Give me a second. I think it is time to wrap this video up and say goodbye for the time being. I'd like to say I welcome all comments, critiques, criticisms, questions, everything in the comment section below. I always encourage discussion, and especially with a rather new and experimental type of enclosure like this, I'm interested to see what people think. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to drop those in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more reptile, amphibian, and greenhouse related content in the future, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. And if you're already subscribed and want to get notified every time I release a new video, be sure to hit the little bell icon before you go. So, with all that said and done, I'm Daniel Carter at Afro Herb Keeper, pretty proud of this thing, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching.